Well, we're back for another rewatchable roundtable. This one, a very special group of Rice Owls who traveled north to Waco in 1991 and knocked off the top 10 Baylor Bears in a game that stands the test of time in terms of people looking back at great moments in Rice football history. Before we get started on talking about the game, let's just go around the room and everybody, we'll do a quick little introduction. Tony, why don't you start us off?
Tony Barker, I was 99, and I believe the position I played was stud linebacker.
Larry Stuppy, right guard, and it's good to be back to talk about this game. It was a great game.
Matt Sign, nose guard, and always great to talk about another win over Baylor, especially a ranked Baylor.
Yes, sir.
Just give a quick introduction about yourself.
Okay. Yeah, basically, I was part of the initial class, Goldsmith class, with Matt Stein and Trevor Cobb in 1989. So I was proud to be part of that group to help kind of restore the winning tradition there at Rice over the next 4 years. So I know we had great teammates and great teams and amazing coaching staff. So I was proud to be part of that legacy.
It's great to have you. Mr. Cobb. Well,
Yeah.
nice to see you again.
Same here. Trevor Cobb, running back, class of 93 in the 89 and 93.
And then Coach Goldsmith, the man that brought all these gentlemen together and brought us to the reason we're here today. Welcome.
Well, I'm just blessed to be here. I was blessed to be their coach back then, and it was a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Wanted to open this up just by talking about the beginning, talking about how this group of individuals and their teammates all came together. Coach taking over the job, coming into a team that had lost 18 straight games overall, 18 straight in the conference in 1989, and then having to go out and recruit. Obviously, your message was about a new direction, but let's talk a little bit about that initial recruiting class and how it came about that all these gentlemen joined together with you at Rice.
Well, it was unique. I'd seen or knew about a lot of them. I met Stuffy on a recruiting visit to Arkansas, and when I got to Rice, he was there, and that tickled me to death. But the very first recruit, the first night, was Trevor Cobb. And Coach Bowl and I went down there, and we had a great visit with him, and Antonio Wilson later on that night, and Corey Seymour. But I knew about a lot of these guys, and I knew it was January. We weren't going to get some big studs that looked like everybody else at the conference. And I told Craig and some of them, we're going to go after good football players. I see Matt staring at me, and Matt, we knew was good. He wasn't nearly the size that his daddy told me he was. And he wore cowboy boots on his visit to look taller, but I had already seen him for 2 years. And we're just going to go get good football players. And we got good undersized football players for the most part. Joey Wheeler was one like that as a linebacker, but they were all good football players. They just didn't look the part. They were standing on their SATs, I guess. But they came in, they played well, and we had a great coaching staff. I had some great coaches that were with me, and and they knew how to recruit Texas. That was the big thing. We came in. I'm gonna say this now, and I mean it, and these guys will back me up. Hey, if you go be in Texas, recruit a lot of Texas guys. They're good football players, and it'll pay off for you. I promise you that. And that's what a lot of them were. And then we blended in some good guys like Tony. Tony came to see me. I was laid up that spring in my bed with a back. I had to have back surgery that same week, and I was on morphine when Tony came. And so I guess, I don't know, I guess that was a good thing or what, but I was, happy to get a guy that looked like a college linebacker anyway. And he came along and fit right in and did a good job. So I was blessed with all these young men, and that was the philosophy of the recruiting at the time. And by golly, we won with it. If I came back today, we'd win with it again. But that's where we were.
Joey, why don't you start off? Just tell us what it was that made you you decided Rice was the place for you.
Well, basically, obviously being in the Southwest Conference, that was a tremendous draw. I don't know if Fred remembers, but he was actually recruiting me a little bit at Arkansas when he was the linebacker defensive coordinator there. And we had a tremendous high school program at Denison High School, and we won a lot of games. And I knew I wanted to go to a team that had opportunity to win. So I actually, believe it or not, didn't know Rice had lost 18 games straight before I'd gotten there. So it's probably a good thing I didn't know that. But no, just from the time I arrived on campus and I saw the big stadium with the R room and all the lights on and meeting the other players and the coaches, I knew it was the best fit for me long term, academically and athletically. So it was a no-brainer at that point. So I actually decommitted from another school that I had was planning on going to, Stephen F. Austin there in Texas, and ended up joining Rice at the time. So it was like I said, it was a tremendous experience and one that I'm, still grateful for to this day.
Trevor, what was it that made you? I know you were looking at you had baseball and other things in your life, but what was it about Coach Goldsmith and the offer to come to Rice that made you decide that was for you?
Well, when I was 9 years old, I participated in the punt pass kick contest that Rice University had every year. And I won it, and I just fell in love with the campus. My dad worked in NASA with a bunch of Rice guys, and so it was just one of them things that I fell in love with Rice at an early age.
Matt, what about you?
Well, it was it was the opportunity to play in the Southwest Conference, which is always a draw, and I was just looking for someone to take a chance on me, and certainly Coach Goldsmith did that. I guess either way, I was destined to be an Owl, because if I didn't go on the Rice, I would have gone to Temple. So it really worked out well for me, and I always felt that we had good teammates and good coaches, and it was a nice family to go to, and was certainly close to home, but not too close. And obviously got great education and being in the city of Houston. But I was just very appreciative of having the opportunity. And that's all I was looking for.
Tony, making the decision to transfer to Rice. What led that to happen?
Well, I knew Coach Goldsmith from Arkansas because he had recruited me out of high school there. And then the coaching staff at Kansas, where I had ended up going, they got fired. And one of the coaches from KU was on Coach Goldsmith's staff. And so I made the transfer there because I knew Coach Goldsmith, knew some of the other coaches on the staff, and I felt like, the education from Rice University was gonna, whether football went on from there or not, it was something that I would be able to live the rest of my life on that Rice education.
Larry, what did you think when all these young kids started rolling in? I mean, you'd endured some of what had happened before, and I mean, was there how seamlessly did these guys come in? I know always with a new coach, new staff, there can be some acclimation time, but what was it like when they all came in?
Yeah, so part of, even though I was a senior during this year, I pretty much came in with Matt, Trevor, and Joey, because I came from a junior college. And
okay.
It's kind of funny how things work out, because the coaches at Rice, they weren't the ones that recruited me. Heimerdinger recruited me at Fullerton. Goldsmith recruited me at Arkansas. Coach Spann, the previous coach, had gone to Fullerton, didn't know anybody in California, but knew Heimerdinger. Heimerdinger knew I wasn't going to Fullerton and said, hey, you might want to call this guy. So that's how I got on Rice's radar. Being 0-13 or 11, the coaches left for Temple, and they offered me Temple, but they also said you could still have the Rice scholarship. And my mom knew the academics of Rice and pretty much said, I let you do junior college. You're doing this Rice thing. And it was the best fit. I was waiting for Arkansas to call me, and Hawaii. I had to be at Rice by January 3rd, so I took Rice, went to Rice, and that's when both schools called offering scholarships while I was already at Rice. And then 2 weeks later, Coach Goldsmith got the head coaching job. So I pretty much came in with this group here. That was part of Coach Goldsmith's
The Baylor game in '89. I mean, obviously Baylor is what we're here to talk about in
Yeah.
'91, but 2 years earlier, that game really beating SMU in the first game back for them was a win. It broke the streaks. But the Baylor game, I'm guessing, was more a true measure of how far Rice had come that first year and measuring against a team that really was fully Southwest Conference caliber.
You know, I believe that. I mean, it was a big win for us because, you know, Baylor was a really good team. They didn't really do it that year. But that team had 3 first-round draft picks on it. And once again, they missed a number of field goals that day. But you know, we won 6-3. We had we weren't nearly as talented as they were. But I did think it, you know, set the tone for what was going to happen over the course of the next 3 years. And you know, people forget the very next week Baylor beat Texas 50-7. So we beat a very good team that day, and we beat a very good team on the road. And Rice hadn't done that quite a while. And I think everything started to come together, you know, for the program, and everyone started believing in each other. And I think we saw over the course of the next couple of years how, you know, we all grew as a family and believed in one another.
And you know, that wouldn't have been the game if we hadn't got robbed in the last play against Texas. We had,
yeah, exactly.
With Texas 30, you know, that year or two earlier. So we were starting to come along, then got it back for the Baylor game. But hey, you know what? We beat SMU in the opener. We learned the fight song. We had a song that we sang, the old grapevine, whatever what we sang. And I had it printed out for the guys so they learned it. By the time we won again at Baylor, we'd forgot the words.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing part of the prep for '90 was to practice a little, be more prepared for victories by learning the fight song.
Yeah.
Joe, you still remember it, right? You're gonna sing that?
Oh man, I couldn't sing those words, but I do remember that game in '89 against Texas. I think they went for 2, and when I recall, the quarterback stepped out of bounds, and then he put the ball over the pylon. Is that right, Coach?
Yeah, Peter Cartier. Right.
Yeah, he was out of bounds.
We were
And the
on the road.
official on the spot marked him out of bounds, and the other guy came across, put it in. David McWilliams came over right afterwards and apologized to me because he said all these guys in the press box said that they was out of bounds, you know. And
Yeah,
but
and we were in Austin too.
He got in by that much.
and Matt Sine intercepted a pass in that game.
You did?
I did. That had a long return of 0 yards.
Sweet.
But you know, the Baylor game, looking at Trevor in '89, when we really needed to kill a lot of clock and everything like that, that was one of the times that Trevor really showed what he was going to be like down the road, because he had been alternating a lot of tailback. And when it came down to that drive, we just kept handing it to Taylor and to Trevor, and they never got the ball back. And that was one of the times that you knew that Trevor Cobb was going to be, you know, something really, really special on the national spotlight in the years to come.
Was that a matter of something that you were all seeing in practice and finally seeing it transfer over to the field? I mean, you know, the defensive guys, you're seeing them in practice. Larry, you're pushing around people. Did you guys have a sense that we just got to get the spark going, get the taste in the game, and we're going to have something fun here?
Yeah, Trevor was always a leader on the field. I mean, he was a workhorse. He carried the ball every play in the game and in all practice long too.
Trevor, you kind of like getting never get tired, right? You know, the more the merrier with the ball.
I tried. I had a lot of endurance back then. Of course, I was 100 pounds lighter, but.
And I do have to admit, I've always said Trevor was 4'6", but I'm going to finally admit it now after looking at more film and all these games. I guess he was really 4'5".
Right.
4'5" in street, 4'5" in the jersey.
4 or 5. Something wet.
That was after 40 carries too. That was the big difference.
Trevor's the only guy that I've ever known in practice. Every time he carried the football, he ran 50-yard sprints all the way down the field before he came back to the huddle. And I remember looking down down the offensive side of the field and him carrying the torch and showing us how it needed to be done. So his work ethic was second to none by far.
Let's talk about 1990. We'll move ahead a year. And it's a year where a lot of the things that you saw bits and pieces of in 89 were really coming together. And the season came down to the Baylor game with a chance to end with a very special moment of not only getting the first winning season since 1963, but a bowl bid. You fall down early 17-0. What you remember of that game, I mean, just how you guys were preparing for that, and then also maybe during the game, was it ever a moment where you thought this is slipping away, or was it just we just going to come back?
So this game, I actually have the TV version of it, so I've seen it within the last few years. It felt like 42-0 at halftime. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Amen.
We couldn't move the ball. I think we were 3 and out for most of the first half of the season, and defense just kept it in the game, kept the game. I think, Tony, did you get an interception that game, or was that the game where you scored? I think defense scored a touchdown.
Yeah,
Robert,
Tony got it.
Fumble out at about the yard line, and I caught it and ran it down to the touchdown.
So all of a sudden it felt like it was 17-7, and somehow we were in the game. But
That's right.
Worse. Yeah, and another Baylor game comes down to the last second. And the other thing about that game is at the end on our drive, we had actually lost the game. The game was over. One of their defensive guys had a pass interference, kept the drive alive, and later we scored. I think we pushed Nigel in.
Yeah, that's right.
So Gideon ran 50 yards and knocked him into the end zone.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was more of a Hail Mary than a Hail Mary, because it was a lot of
Scrum.
But you guys were right about Larry. You were right about nothing was working. We couldn't get anything going. And during the last drive, I asked Dinger on the headset. I said, Dinger, if we should happen to score, you got any idea what we should call it? And he said, I don't have a clue. And when we scored, Dave Cope came up with the idea. He said, get them to jump off sides and it'll buy us a little more time to think of something, plus 1.5 yards if it works. Well, it worked. And they came up with a great either-or call. And Courtney Craven was the defense they gave us. We were going to either run the zone to the left with Trevor, but they were stacked up, or throw this quick pass to Courtney. And he was wide open, and we just did not execute the play, really. And to be honest with you, we had that losing streak was also like a 30-year losing streak at the time. And I was real tempted to kick it and get that losing streak off our back, but I knew I couldn't go in the dressing room and face the players if I went for the tie. So we went for it. It was a good plan, but it didn't happen. But, things turned out the next couple of years anyway.
Yeah.
So you walk off the field that close to being Baylor, that close to a winning season, that close to a bowl game.
That was a good football team. That was a real 1990 was a very, very good football team.
You talk a little bit about how you guys attacked coming in 91. I mean, now I'm guessing there's a level of expectation that maybe had not been there previously. So Tony, why don't you start? Just you remember what the mindset was, because that would have been your senior year, and being so close and having things right there. What was it like getting ready for that last year?
Well, I just know that we had, come close to a winning season the previous year, and, expectations were high for that season. Started off the year strong, and, with all the team, everybody on this call, Coach Goldsmith, we were on track for a good year.
Joey, how about you?
Probably what I remember most about that season was, like Matt said, I mean, the year before we had an opportunity for our first winning season since 1963. And for all of us, that's kind of was our initial goal, was to get that first winning season, which we weren't able to quite do in 1991, but we were able to accomplish in 92, which was a major milestone, I felt like. But again, in 91, we had a huge victory, obviously the Baylor game, which we'll talk about today, and quite a few other big games. And it actually had a big win in 1990 that a lot of people lose sight of, was against the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. That I thought kind of propelled us into having a lot more success in 1991. That was a 19-17 win in Little Rock in 1990.
That was special.
Yeah, that was probably the funnest game. Was the night game, right?
What was that, Trevor?
That was probably the most fun game to play in. It was the Arkansas game.
Yeah.
It was a night game.
Yeah.
What was that in Fayetteville?
Couldn't get that clock to keep going though. They have funny.
I know.
You know, we beat them in every phase. The offense played well that night. The defense played well, and the special teams played well. I mean, we just beat them in every which way, and that was. I know I cried after that one.
But yeah, we call that the Goldsmith game.
Hey,
It was all for the coaches, you know.
And Bender, you know, we were all, you know. So you guys gave us one of the greatest presents we ever had in coaching that night.
When Coach Goldsmith, I don't know if you remember, but Arkansas's starting tailback that night was Aaron Jackson. And when I was in Denison, he was from Denison. I was in the 8th grade when he was a senior in high school, and he was a all-state, first team all-state running back out of Denison, my hometown. And he was starting tailback that night. So for me to get an opportunity to play against him in that game was probably the biggest thrill, one of the biggest thrills of my career at Rice.
Well, let's move up to the Baylor game, but let's talk about the start of the season. Start off 2-0, and then you're 2-0 on the road, which continued a streak where you're having a lot of success on the road. You come home to start the year at home against Iowa State, and looked like you might be heading for 3-0, but just tell me a little bit about that one.
Yeah, that was a rough one. That was we pretty much dominated that game the entire game, and I remember telling our trainer, you know, this is the first time we'll be 3-0 since the 60s. The offense had already been taken out of the game, and we had the ball, and there was 2 minutes left in the game, and we had a 10-point lead. So we pretty much thought we were 3-0 at that point. But yeah, they had to come back and get they had to get the ball back. They had to score. They had to get a 2-point conversion, then an onside kick. Then they had to get some yards to get close enough to a field goal and then kick the field goal. And from what I remember, Coach, I think you reminded me that field goal kicker was struggling at that time.
Yeah, he missed one the week before from the 10-yard line against Wisconsin.
Yeah.
But that was a 48-yarder. Well, it was I tell you what, I tell it now. I took the heat for that. I got called the bonehead coach of the week by Sports Illustrated. Press conference, they said, why did you take Trevor Cobb out in your first team offense? I said, well, I thought the game was won. The real truth of that now, but God rest his soul, Heimendinger, he was a great coach and a dear, dear friend. But I'll just tell you guys, we stopped them at about, our 25-yard line or their defense comes off the field, less than 2 minutes to go. And I'm over on the bench congratulating all the defensive guys. And, we got the game. Then I start walking out and I run into Trevor Cobb on the sidelines. What are you doing there, Trevor? He said, well, I'm out of there. And then I looked out and we got a true freshman quarterback in there. And I said, oh my gosh. And I grabbed the headset. I said, Dinger, what are you doing? And Dinger said, Fred, just relax. The game's over with. Quit getting so hyper. And boom, we get the fumble, But the young man that fumbled the ball 2 years later came back and scored 5 touchdowns against Iowa State. We ran him out of the stadium for all 60 minutes that day. Yeah. But, it was a great – I talked to Willie the other day. One of the all-time great runs. It took forever, but he went down the sidelines on option play, speed option, turn it up, cut it down to about 50 yards down the left sideline, and ran it for a touchdown. That's how bad we were dominating them. But, you know, Greg Willig, I called him and apologized after I saw the 91 tape. He had a heck of a game against Baylor that day. I mean, not too many quarterbacks could take the pounding he had with the kind of defense they had, as you well know, them rushing the passer, Larry. And Greg Willig played tremendous in that Baylor game, that 1991.
Again, you're going back to Baylor, a place where you won 2 years before against a team that you'd lost by a point the year before. And it's a team that's just coming off having won at Colorado. That's a top 10 team.
One.
Do you remember, I mean, in terms of just preparation, was it, I guess it's easy to focus on it, but did you try not to overthink it in terms of where they were and just kind of remember who they were on the field from the previous 2 years? Tony, how about you?
I just, remember the previous 2 years and playing well, and coming up just a tad bit short. So that's always a bit of an incentive to a little bit more and, do our best to win. And the help of the coaching staff and all the teammates, everybody, we stuck it to them. And one thing that I told you in an email earlier when we were talking about this, I remember when the game was over, the last play after Joe had stopped that 4th and 1 play. I wasn't in the play, but I remember coming up to Robert Strait and just getting up in his face and telling him, this is like a nightmare, and it just keeps.
I remember that.
I had to say it to him, and I did, and that was it. We won.
That was probably the polite version, Tony.
Like I said, watching my language here. So now that's what I remember most about that game. And like I said, we won. We beat a number 7, number 8 ranked team in the country. And I also remember Coach Goldsmith doing his boogity dance.
Boogie dance.
Coach Burns going, that's a shot heard round the world.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was
Even just preparing for the game, I don't know what the point spread was. It probably wasn't good for us. But Coach Bender was always the voice of reason for us. And he said, keep this thing close and good things will happen. And I think he was a little worried in the beginning. He would tell us, they're going to cuss at you. They're going to call you names. They're going to say things about your mama. That's where Coach Bender taught me the kill him with kindness approach and just say thank you very much and get back in the huddle and just keep it close and good things will happen.
I didn't take Coach Bender's advice on that. I right back to him. That was a great win.
It was hot too. You remember how hot that game was?
That's what I was telling Chuck earlier. I think, Coach Goldsmith and everybody's always taught us, leave it all on the field. Don't take anything with you. I had to get IVs after that game.
Yeah.
And I remember laying up in there, and my daddy had to come in. They came in there to see how I was, but I had to get IVs in that game in Waco. But yeah, it was hot.
Well, I think first of all, we were pretty confident going in because we knew that Coach Goldsmith, he had us staying at this little dive motel called the River Place Inn, and we had won there 2 years earlier, so we decided to go back. And so we were confident going in the game because we were staying. We're the only people staying at that hotel. This hotel had velvet Elvis paintings, and we had our pregame meal in a closed down 50s diner on the property. So we were very confident going in, and the interesting thing about that is that hotel is gone now, but that's where McLean Stadium is now. It's on top of where the hotel was. So, but I think we were always, we weren't the most talented, but we were always, and we didn't win all the time, but we were certainly always confident in our ability to win that game and win any game. And I think that was a testament to coach, and it was a testament to the entire team. But there, for whatever it's worth, there was something about the Baylor game that I think we all felt quietly confident about.
Yeah. We always played well against them.
Yeah.
Real well.
Yeah, just match up well. Some teams you just match up well with.
Anything about playing? Anything you remember about Floyd Casey and about that stadium in particular, or being one of the older and now no longer active venues?
I remember you came out kind of on the 50-yard line. You came up steps, and I just remember that they have the old Baylor line, which is all the Baylor freshmen wearing the same shirt, and they were chanting, "Warm up the bus, warm up the bus."
Yeah.
That stuck with me, and I think that really irritated all of us. And I'm sure Tony shot them the finger or something.
Probably
well worth it.
A little more verbal part of it.
Oh man.
They were coming in obviously rolling. I mean, they had a great offensive attack. They had the defense with Santana Dotson being you talked about how hard hitting they were. They had a pretty fearsome line. I mean, matchup wise, one of the things they were at that point were averaging like 2.5 yards per carry. One of the things that I noticed in the stats was that even riding on Trevor's shoulders, Rice still was a fairly diverse offense. The split between the offense and the rushing and passing was not that far removed from each other. Coach, I mean, when you're looking at attacking that kind of a defense, do you go about trying to be more aggressive, or do you try to just let the game play out and not overextend yourself and show too much early?
Well, offensively, for the running game, and you saw it, and we only had 4 running plays.
That's it.
Because we didn't have to call it inside zone or an outside zone because Trevor had such good peripheral vision. We could call 28, and he could run it back up inside, or he could take it out wherever he found something. In other years, we had to have a 20, 21, and a 28 to call it for other backs. And so we were able to take advantage of a couple of things inside the first half, and he ripped off a lot of yards. They shut that down. But the thing is, I mentioned about Willie, he stood in there. Greg was a tough kid, a smart kid. He could carry out Dinger's game plan. And he hung in there that day and threw an interception the first play. But, that was really a great throw. It should have been caught by us. But Ed Howard had a coming out that day, too, a true freshman, and he made some, really good catches. Eric Henley made a great catch over the middle to keep a drive going. And Eric was a special guy. He was the second or third leading pass receiver in the country in '89. But we couldn't run very much that year. And the next year we got going. And I got to tell this because we're coming off the field in 1990 and we just beaten somebody. And I realized we'd only thrown him one ball all day. And coming off the field, I put my arm around him. I said, "Hey, I apologize that we're not getting you the ball." And he looked at me and said, "Coach, we're winning." He said, "I'd rather block every play and win than have to have the ball thrown to me all day long." And that's the kind of attitude he had. And when it came back 2 years later, right there in '91, he just made that fantastic catch over the middle. But so it was balanced. And we had 2 of the smartest offensive coaches you'll ever see. Dinger was really, really good. And Les Penny, he helped Dinger with the play calling on Saturdays. And he coached with me at 2 different schools and was a real gem as a play caller. And we had good coaches. Bender was a heck of a line coach. Ernhelt was after him. Craig Bowles, one of the great coaches in the country now, our defensive coordinator at the time. And so, we were blessed with some good people. So those game plans were balanced. Now, if they'd have listened to me, we had to run Trevor every play.
Yeah.
Well, you know, at the time, and I only found this out later as I coached about how special that offense was and running that zone offense. Not a lot of teams did that back then. And it was designed to make the defense wrong every time. We only had the 4 running plays. We could call it 28 at every defense, and if it wasn't the defense we wanted, we just called opposite. And if run wasn't going to look good, we would check it to a quick pass. And so it always made the defense wrong, and we didn't have to figure out who we were going to block. We just took our steps, and we'd end up to whoever we need to get. So, like you were talking about Dinger, I mean, he's definitely a special coach through college and then into the NFL.
Yeah, he's got 2 Super Bowl rings.
Yeah. And a lot of running backs of the year too, right?
Yep.
Trevor, how fun was it running behind that line and with that kind of a freedom in the scheme? And I'm guessing you could hear a lot of frustrated defenders because it must not have been very easy to kind of track what you were doing if you had that kind of ability to kind of move between different areas.
It was a lot of fun. Me being only 5'9" and my linemen were 6'4" and taller, I just got high right behind them, big butts, Larry's big butt.
We didn't have to open it too much.
And all them guys, you know. So they just leaned on the guys, and I just kind of find a little crease, shoot through there. So it was a lot of fun.
You know, the game starts out trading punts, and Rice finally scores late in the first to take the lead in the first quarter. But then Baylor answers right back. Rice goes back in front 10-7, and then later in the second quarter, you're able to pin them deep when Sam Baldwin makes his only punt of the year, maybe of his career, but he punts in. Now in the stats, it's 49 yards. I realize it could be a 20-yard punt that rolled, very friendly, but I don't know what the circumstances were of him being in the game to punt that time. But that punt pins them deep, and then you're able to get them to punt the ball back to you, and you score late and look like you're going to go in 17-10. Now, you remember anything about what transpired to have him punting that ball at that point?
I don't remember.
You probably didn't.
The notes that you sent out, and I was just sitting there scratching my head, going, I don't remember that part of it.
Well, but it's, again, another game where defense was holding them, keeping us in the game, and we were just plugging and chugging and trying to keep it close until the end, you know.
Well, you know, you're trying to beat a top 10 team. You've taken a 17-7 lead. And then right before halftime, they get in position, and they kick a 58-yard field goal. You recall, I mean, what was the locker room like when they get a late score like that with a bomb like that? I mean, what does that do in terms of how your feeling is when you go in at halftime? Tony, you'll start.
Well, you know, and the score was at that point 17-10.
Yeah, we're up, right?
I mean, you know, we were in the locker room, got the usual, got with our position coach and made some adjustments according to what they had been doing previously in the game, and you know, got pumped up back out there. But you know, being ahead at halftime, that gives you confidence in itself.
Yeah.
So going back out there, knowing what the offense was able to do, Trevor, you know, the court or Willie get the receivers, you know, we were moving the ball. So it was, you know, I think we went out there initially at the beginning of the game with the intent to win, and at halftime being ahead, we were even more confident that this was going to end up in our hands. So,
especially when Trevor was running the ball. I mean, almost, I don't know, 6 or 7 games that year, he had 200 yards, maybe more. You know, Baylor and Texas, back-to-back games, for me as a lineman, I knew I was going up against 2 of the top 5 defensive lines in the nation back-to-back. And I think, Trevor, you were running like we normally would have you run. I mean, we had a lot of confidence on the offense.
yeah, and that's what I'm saying.
Make it happen.
With what was going on offense and how we were playing on defense, I think we were all at halftime even more confident than we were at the beginning of.
Yeah.
One
We just
thing-
wanted to get out of the sun, first of all. It was so hot. But, you know, I think that, yeah, like everyone's saying, we were very confident. The game was really being played the way we thought it was going to be played. And I think a little bit that they kicked that field goal, and I think they also got a little bit overconfident that they were getting ready to run us over. And you know, we weren't going to go away. We might have given them some yardage, but they were going to have to earn it. And we just had to hold on, and we knew the offense was going to score some more points.
Yeah, I don't remember him kicking the 58-yard field goal, but I do remember he missed 3 others the rest of that game, right? So.
When at halftime, though, we had talked during the week. At halftime, you know, they beaten Colorado with Santana Dotson making the big field goal block and brought a lot of pressure off that side and got with Chris Miller at halftime. And we'd seen it now in the first half. And so we said, okay, if we get a crucial situation, we're going to be able to run our fake. We knew we could run that fake, and he was good at it. Yeah. And it turned out when we were driving down there at the last drive, we knew Darrell Richardson could not kick the ball into the wind for like a 48-yarder. But Baylor didn't know he couldn't kick it into the wind. So that thing worked. And sure enough, I mean, three downs later after Chris ran 17 yards, we came up with about a 4th and 4 or 5, I guess. And so we lined up to kick it again, and Darrell had the leg to do that. And he was always cool as could be. It didn't matter whatever Darrell was doing. He was cool as a cucumber. And he knocked that thing through, and then he did it again the next year, too, to win the ball game. That was a big play, and you know, Chris was able to execute it, and everybody blocked and did their thing just like they were supposed to. He took off around Santana Dotson. Santana never saw him.
Yeah.
When you look at the you know, the stats in the game, obviously it was you know, Baylor. It's kind of interesting to look at because Baylor had over 500 yards total offense. There's not a ton of turnovers, but I think the hallmark of the game was that getting stops when you need it, and then putting it on the kicker's shoulders, and he wasn't able to get it done. I mean, defensively, when you guys in the second half, you talked about earlier game, just stick in there, keep it close and everything. Was that your mentality, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, we kept plugging away at it, and you know, they kept missing kicks, but you know, they weren't scoring touchdowns, and they might have moved the ball, but we did enough to you know, keep the game tied, and we just had to give our offense a chance. And I think, you know, the other thing people, you know, have to, you know, also remember is that, you know, Baylor had a big, and I would say hefty offensive line. And it was a hot day, and I can tell you
their running back was big too. I mean,
the running back was 270, but they were getting tired. And I think that it was really a testament to the shape we're in. But you know, I think it was a testament to, you know, quite frankly, you know, our linebacker play, not because both were on the call, but you know, was superb that day. I mean, the 2 inside defensive linemen are our former quarterback and the guy weighing 220 pounds. And we had Derek and you know, Sean Alberdine, who was outstanding. And you know, I think they were going to pound us, but we hung in there, and it really paid off.
You guys kept them off of us as much as you could so that we could make plays, and you guys made a bunch of plays too. I was watching the highlight reel of the last 8 minutes of the game on YouTube, and you and being made numerous plays from the defensive line. So it was just a overall team, great team.
It was.
Matt, didn't your brother play at Baylor?
He played at Baylor in '88, and so knew all those guys very well. So
So
that
personal.
game was always special
Yeah.
and important to me. And so I enjoyed the fact that we beat them 3 out of 4 years and probably should have beat them all 4 years.
Yeah.
Well, Coach, it just sounds like it was great strategy because I know in the notes it said that Rice had the probably the smallest interior defensive line in the country, but you obviously had them set up for just this game to have those lean, clean, and very
Yeah.
aerobically mastered interior defensive linemen to maximize on a hot day.
Well, if y'all will go back and look at that tape again, I don't want to blow smoke for Matt, but when I looked at it again, I always knew he was good. But that was one of the truly great performances I've ever seen by a football player throughout that whole game. I mean, 2 guys trying to block him the whole game, and he'd go fire down there low and then seat roll. He wasn't taking himself out of the plays just to protect linebackers down. He was coming off and making plays, you know, coming up under those guys, and it was tremendous. You know, they were huge, but Matt was making plays under and through them, you know, all day long, and it was one of the great performances I'd ever seen.
Absolutely. Yep.
Awesome.
Let's go to as the game winds down. They keep getting their shots to take the lead, and the last one was they missed a 27-yard field goal. Trevor and Larry, I mean, the offense takes over the ball now. You got about 8 minutes left in the game. In the back of your mind, you know that they've had their shots, and maybe the next time they're not going to miss. So, do you remember anything said or any special sense of this is our time, we better get going?
Trevor, you remember anything said? I just knew that we had the offensive scheme and Trevor to keep the ball moving on the ground. Hopefully the clock keep moving, get a chance to get down there and score. I mean, it was win or lose after every game. The first thing we would do is find Cousins and ask him how many yards did Trevor have. You know, so from the line point of view, you know, we knew he was running. It was working. It wasn't like they were shutting us down like the year before where it felt like it was 40-0. We were moving the ball around.
Yeah, the key was just keep the ball and keep them from getting the ball. And,
Yeah.
Well, the one thing that struck me was that in all the earlier scoring drives to get to 17 points, the longest it had taken the offense to get down the field was about 2.5 minutes. And then in this case, and in that case, if you take 2 minutes and kick a field goal, there's still plenty of time left. I mean, Coach, if you're going to draw it up and you had 8 minutes left, a 6.5 minute drive is right up there with what you'd really want to have happen at that moment.
Oh yeah, we needed that really badly, and it gave our defense a chance to get some rest, and they came back strong and you know, got them stopped, you know, and put pressure on them and everything like that, you know, right there. So that was a big factor when we could keep that ball, and then you know, as time went on in Trevor's career too, there were more and more games like that as well.
Joey and Tony, and Matt, you guys, they're driving down the field, but you see lining up for the field goal at what Coach has already acknowledged was probably a more of a challenging distance. I mean, were you all aware that the fake was coming? I mean, were you already getting ready to be prepared to, if it doesn't go, we got to get on the field? I mean, was there any anticipation about what was about to happen there?
I don't remember being on the loop for that. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, but standing there on the sidelines, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, and 15, 17 yards later, and it's a first down. You're like, yeah, get a little bit more rest, soak up some more water, Gatorade.
That's right.
Impressive.
Joey, what do you remember about that?
Yeah, we had all the confidence in the world in Daryl Richardson. A lot of people don't remember that he was actually a pitcher on our baseball team as well. So he was cool, calm, and collected. And I didn't remember the win factor that Coach Goldsmith mentioned, but I had confidence in his ability to kick that field goal. And like Tony said, I think we weren't privy to the fact that we were even calling the fake at that point because Coach Goldsmith had the courage to make that decision, and obviously it was a secret to everyone. So
Tony would have yelled out loud to the other team if they told him.
Yeah.
You're not good at telling them.
They would have been able to tell by my body language something.
Right.
I just wish they had burned. I think we left a little bit more time on the clock than maybe we had hoped, but I know we burned a lot as well. But on that last drive, you know, like Matt said, we just had to get gritty and just keep playing. You know, all throughout that last drive, there were numerous plays made by multiple players across the board.
That's right.
A great team effort.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that, in addition to getting in a better position by going with the fake, it also forced Baylor to start using their timeouts. So when they got the ball back, they were really limited in what they could do. And they were, Coach, for them to go the length of the field in a shorter amount of time. I mean, was that really what they were built to do, or was that something that played more to your advantage to defend them?
Well, scheme-wise, they weren't built to do it that much, but you notice what they came right back. They had that one wide receiver that could fly now, you know, and we weren't exactly covering them with a bunch of Olympic hopefuls. Our guys really rose up and played very, very well in that situation, you know, because they did have the speed to do it. And, you know, it helped during the ball game, too, that their tailback couldn't catch like Trevor could. He couldn't catch a thing all day long. But, that helped. But I thought our guys really rose to the occasion on that last drive and played some real good defense.
And then in a game that it comes down to it, where power and everything comes down to the 4th and 1. Joey, just I know before we got started you were talking about it, but walk through that play on 4th and 1. I mean, the game's on the line, and there's opportunity to end it right there, and there's a large human being going to carry the rock. So walk me through the play.
Well, yeah, it was 4th and 1. When I remember, the ball was on like the 39-yard line, and it would have been a long kick, probably 57, 58 yards. So I think Coach Taft at the time decided that, you know, they were going to tote the rock and try to get the first down. They still had a minute or so left in the game. So they had time to convert and then still, you know, move down the field and either get a tying field goal or try to win the game with a touchdown. What I remember when they came up to the line of scrimmage, if you look at the tape, you'll see that the tackle on the strong side was kind of widened out a little bit. So they created a pretty significant gap there in the B gap. And the other thing that tipped me off was Robert Strait, who was their 270-pound fullback. He was in a runner stance, a sprinter's runner stance with his hand at 3 yards back. So he was kind of scrunched up towards the line of scrimmage. And I played fullback in high school, and I know that the normal position was like 4 yards. So I identified that. I saw him at 3 yards. I said, well, they're going to hand me the ball on the inside run. So again, it was just more of a gut feeling, instinct that I walked up to the line of scrimmage, and Chuck Gobronson, number 39, who was playing defensive tackle, he was actually my roommate. So we had a lot of trust with each other. So I walked up, tapped him on the rear, and told him to slide over to the A gap and get in a 4-point stance like goal line. And I told him just shoot the gap. I knew Matt was going to hold his ground. Chuck and I held his ground, and I kind of walked up to the B gap, and I was watching the football. That's all I was watching, and I knew there was going to be a heck of a collision in that B gap. And when the ball was snapped, I jumped in there, and I, like I said, I think I got part of the tackle, but to be honest, Derek Rutherford, number 97, the outside defensive end, he came crashing down. He read it perfectly, and Sean Alberding from the right side, and they both collapsed on him and sandwiched the ball carrier right at the point of attack. They may have got a half yard to a yard, but I think they needed a little over a yard. And I just remember everybody, you know, being on my back, big collision, probably not, you know, foolish, and looking up and seeing Alberding ripping him backwards for a yard or two, and just knowing at that time that on that stop that the game was over. And it was just a tremendous feeling across the board.
I've watched the video and I've seen the celebration on the sidelines. One thing about this is that, all of you had come from Texas, so you obviously had people that you knew on the Baylor team. We already know who Tony talked to right after the game, but any of you, was there somebody on the other side that, you just had to get a minute with, and not necessarily to rub it in their face, but just to, you had the moment because you were victorious and you had to find them?
Well, the quarterback, J.J. Joe, was a teammate of mine in high school. So I had a brief conversation with him. They were quite stunned. And I remember our small contingent of Rice fans that were there. That's all you heard. They didn't see that coming at all. And quite frankly, they weren't really the same the rest of the season. Went to a bowl game, but they certainly never played the way like they did against Colorado a few weeks earlier. But
Yeah.
I just remember the silence and the looks on their face.
Trevor, what about you?
Well, I knew they had Santana Dotson. They had James Francis. They had Malcolm Franks. That whole defense went first, second round in the draft. Apple Fontenot went to Yates. So I knew a lot of them guys. And like Matt said, it's great to see them afterwards and see the look on their faces and stuff. And, it was a great day for Rice football. So.
It was a great team win.
Like you said, Chuck, I didn't know about anybody on that team, but I made friends real quick. Enemies, friends, enemies, whatever.
You made a friend for life, huh?
But I will say this.
After Grant Taft, as always, was a great gentleman. He was always a mentor to me. When I got the Rice job, he spent several hours with me in Dallas in the concierge room at the Hyatt, just going over a plan because how he did it at Baylor, and really gave me a lot of the ideas of what we needed to do at Rice. And he was always so gracious. After these ball games, he couldn't have been real happy. And I can remember the '89 game, the day before the game, he toured Pam and I around the whole campus and all the new stuff they had done at Floyd Casey at that time. And just a wonderful, wonderful man.
Yeah.
Well, in conclusion, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Coach, I remember on the 91 highlight video in that video where after you did your boogity dance and out there in the middle of the field, and I just remember him saying, "Good job. You did a really good job." I remember him repeating that like 2 or 3 times in that video.
Well,
guys, this has been a lot of fun. I hope you'll be able to tune in on Saturday night. It'll be on Facebook at 7 o'clock. We'll be running the game. A lot of great memories, I'm sure, for you watching the game. Gonna have to make sure that they include the post game and the dance on there, because after the discussion here,
Right.
I think it would be
worth it.
really unfortunate to leave people wondering just to be experiencing that on their own. But as we go here, I just want to ask each of you, just kind of sum up, your career at Rice and kind of the legacy you guys left, because you really did establish the idea of Rice being a team to be reckoned with, a team that could win, and a team that was going to give you a hard battle during your career. So, Larry, we'll start with you. How would you sum it up?
Yeah, so I couldn't have asked for a better match as far as a college experience, a football team to play on. Being on the offensive line, I wasn't happy about moving over at first, but that was truly one of the best things that happened to me. Playing with a unit like we did, and we had a lot of consistency with our linemen. So I want to make sure to mention Applebaum and Joel and Kingston and Trey and Billy and Hetherington. We worked as a pretty good group and had one of the best running backs in the nation. And here we are 30 years later, and just great memories of that and the time at Rice. It was truly special.
Tony?
Well, I think the choice that I made to go play for Coach Goldsmith and go to Rice University and the education, which you can see behind me, that's my lambskin up there. The biggest thing that came out of all that was, Coach Goldsmith and I, we had our disagreements, but his leadership helped build my character to make me a better man at that point in time, and has helped me become the person that I am today. So Coach Goldsmith, thank you for that. And again, just the education that I got from Rice University, which I think is second to none.
Joey, how about you?
Well, I would just say, again, Coach Goldsmith and his leadership, the values that he instilled in all of us as players, the confidence that he built in us, the winning program. The thing that I'm most proud of my tenure there at Rice was what we were able to accomplish, even though, obviously we didn't win, a high percentage of all our games, but I think we did win, 10 games out of the last 2 years, 8 in the first 2 years. So we had our first winning season in 29 years. I'm just proud of being part of that and was able to help contribute. So, for that, it's been an experience that I'll never forget, through my entire lifetime.
Matt?
Well, I would say that, first and foremost, that I'm glad Coach Goldsmith gave me the opportunity to play college football in the Southwest Conference and to earn a degree from Rice University. And it was certainly it was an honor to play with everyone that has been on the Zoom call and all the teammates we had. It was a special 4 years that it was a total team atmosphere, and each and everyone brought their own style and own gifts. But no matter where we came from, whether it's California or a transfer from Kansas or all of us from Texas, everyone got along with each other. It was a great team atmosphere, and it's not easy for Rice. It's not easy for Rice football, and we should always take great pride in what we accomplished there in our short time. But it was certainly an honor and privilege for me to have the opportunity and be teammates with all these fine men.
Trevor, I'd be remiss if I didn't say the most obvious thing of all was that this 91 season for you continued on a stellar path that took you to the postseason award circuit to win the Doak Walker Award, and then your career eventually took you to the College Football Hall of Fame, where Larry and Coach Goldsmith and Matt and a number of your other teammates were there to celebrate with you. When you look back on that kind of a career and everything, can you really sum it up what that offer to come to Rice meant to you when Coach recruited you?
Yeah, I just want to thank all the players that I played with, coaching staff, Coach Goldsmith, for giving me a chance to play at Rice, for the memories, for all the hard work, the blood, sweat, and tears. All the personal awards would not have happened without my teammates. I mean, defense, getting the ball back, offense, blocking, doing everything. So it truly was a special moment in time for me. I think about that every day. So it's not just offense, defense, everybody played a part. Trainers to the equipment guys, everybody. It really was a special time in my life. So I'll never forget that. It allowed, me to get the things that I was able to get as far as a degree from Rice. It's just, it was a dream come true. So.
And Coach, you come to Rice, and your first day you were recruiting, you sign a guy that ends up going to the College Football Hall of Fame, and you have kind of bring back a culture to Rice that had been maybe some people question could ever happen again. Just when you think back to this group of men and all the men that came to Rice with you, and what stands out the most?
Well, one thing I need to pass along is I've stayed very close with all the assistant coaches we've had over the years. We talk all the time and have great relationship to a man, every one of them, and they've had great coaching careers. Everyone said they look back and that was the most fun they ever had in coaching. Was coaching this team, the closeness of the team, what Matt spoke about with all the teammates and how they got along. The coaches could feel that, and they felt so close to these players and to each other. And so this was the most special time in all our coaching lives. And so, again, we were just very, very blessed to be with these young men at that time. And to have the guys like, Bobby May is the athletic director who was behind us in everything, every way he possibly could be. Guys like Bucky Allshouse, people that stood in the gap. It was during this time in 1991 that there were people that trying to close the program down. Headlines in the Houston Post, and these guys just stuck together against all that. And had the backing of other people. And so it was just a beautiful, beautiful time. And that's why they can get together. And you know what? There's nobody in the country that had a bunch of guys. There's been a bigger success, in so many different ways as you track these guys. What are they doing? And they're all doing really, really well and everything. So, and they've come together for each other in a lot of instances too. We're just truly blessed. And Chuck, I wish you could have been there back there at that time. And we appreciate what you've done, not only when Trevor went into the hall, but when doing things like this and the role that you've played. And we're, very, very grateful.
Well, it's easy work when you have great stories like this and great people. And I enjoy getting a chance to meet more of the people who I read about and know their numbers from the stats and everything. So I appreciate that. But again, thanks to every one of you for participating in this. It's one of the things at this special time that actually is a bit of a benefit, that we can use things like this and bring guys together, bring groups together, and have these things where you couldn't necessarily get everybody in the same room at the same time. So again, hope you all watch on Saturday night at 7 o'clock on Facebook.